some as you talk to him? Thank you.
Well, I tell you, not sitting in my chair, you're sitting where my name is.
Thank you.
That is my chair most times, but then shifts. But I know about the inner workings of these things. You can go in.
Matter of fact, I got two.
Yeah, what it does for me, I'm happy about it.
We'll get the prayer.
I understand. I'm the same way.
Okay.
Also, you like Santa Maria? I get some Santa Maria. Santa Maria's kind of way in this. I love that track, but it's home.
You got it. Hey,
We're gonna have a substitute.
You two mad?
That's the teacher.
me and God ain't squared up. Terry got it.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Ascension Drainage Meeting, March the 7th. The Secretary let it be known that Mr. Todd Lambert is absent tonight. They're on their way to the hospital. Hopefully they can have a new grandbaby here shortly.
Good.
Ms. Terry, would you please lead us in the invocation followed by the pledge?
Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather tonight to do the business of Parish of Ascension, particularly as it relates to drainage. We ask your blessings on our parish in the next few days, Father, as we anticipate bad weather. We ask your blessings particularly on the folks who will be assisting those who might have drainage issues. Father, we thank you for all the many blessings of living in this parish, and I offer a moment for all of us to include our personal appeals to you. I particularly ask for blessings on my friend Glenda. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anyone wishing to speak on any agenda item, please sign in with Ms. Heather. Move on to number 4, the acceptance of minutes for the February 1st meeting.
You gonna pull?
I'm sorry, before we move on to number 4, we will be pulling agenda item number 8. I'm sorry. We got my glasses again.
Need mine?
We good, thank you. Okay, we'll pull number 8. We will move on now to the acceptance of minutes of number 4, the February 1st meeting.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Mr. Kluwat, second by Mr. Johnny. Discussion, none, motion passed. We'll move on to Chairman's report. We spent some time in Shreveport this last weekend, and we made many committee meetings, and one of them was the coastal. And some of the things that we were hearing in there, we really alarmed. I'm gonna let Chairman Kluwat give a little report on it, but as we go through this, the parishes, our surrounding parishes, all up the East Coast, West Coast, we're gonna have to get together real soon, because 2017 flood insurance is gonna be really interesting. So, Mr. Kluwat, if you don't mind, please give us a report.
Well, real quick on a summary, as we got together, most of the council people that were there were in attendance for that session of the coastal parishes. And we made a good push about 2.5 years ago and got some things done with Bigger Water Act for FEMA. The push right now is to keep addressing the mapping and clarifications on that. And within the Coastal Parishes Committee, we've also incorporated with the southeastern coast of the United States, which is 3 or 4 states, and looking at those committees. And there's a move going on, and it's led by GNO Inc., but also this commission is really grown, and everybody, parish president, all administration, and this committee will be hearing from them on the things that are coming. Kim was there, and what we got to hit right now, and there's been some personal meetings with Garrett Graves, Congressman Graves, and several others that are in line with trying to change some laws for us and get some things settled. So within that, the next move is to put together the resolutions that they want to go forward with the wording, and that'll be distributed after the next meeting of the coastal parishes. And that'll come back in front of us because we will be looking for Chairman Lambert to back the resolutions that we bring forward to try to go forward to our federal agencies. And also, we've been keeping our state representatives and our state delegation on board with what we got. It's like Dempsey said, we made some good moves. Everybody on this council worked hard, and administration and we made some good moves to try to get some legislation changed a little bit and pushed back. But it's coming back on us, and we just got to keep up the fight. And I'm gonna be quite honest with everybody. You're probably looking at a 2-year fight. There's some things that we're gonna be able to get done by the end of the year, we hope. And hopefully some good things will come out of the spring of 2017. But we really need. There's a lot of organizations working. There's a lot of the engineering firms along the coast that are working with the organizations to furnish information in. And one of the key things we're going for is the mapping, to where we have a true state and a true identity for every parish, a true identity for every every community, and a true identity for every area, where it's not a blanket thrown over the areas, which we feel like FEMA's done up front. And then within that, then we're gonna go forward, and one of the strong things that Mr. Ruin has been working on, with this council up here in this committee, is the certifications of all flood levees and pumping stations and all the structure that we put in place locally in all the localities throughout the South to get that certified to help on the federal flood insurance for our citizens. And that's it. I couldn't give you any details because, like I said, there were some various resolutions that were kind of handwritten, and we hope to see something within the next month or so on that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Cloyd, anyone wants to add anything to that? If not, we'll move on to number 6, drainage report. Mr. Rue?
Yes, sir. We're going to break down the drainage report into 2 phases. One would be actually we talked to Councilman Dawson, and he requested us get some information together on our finances, really projections on how we're going to spend some of the funds over the next 5 or 6 years, and to make sure that there is enough money, in our fund account to finish the projects. And so the first part of our presentation is actually something we put together. I'm going to start with, if you notice the graph, on your screen you'll see the actual spreadsheet with the data. And what we did was we took the ad valorem tax and sales tax all the way from 1985 and put real data in, actual data in all the way up to 2015. And on the screen, they don't have it on your sheet, but on the screen, you notice 2015 is the final year for actual data. Then what we did was run a really linear regression, simple linear regression to predict the trend line and also predict values or the amount of revenue that we project to have over the next actually 8 to 10 years. And that's what the rest of this data is here. Now, if you look at your graph itself, the graph itself is a representation of the data. And like you can see, all the way back to 1985, it's been a steady growth. We had some dips and some increases throughout the years, but again, if you take the trend line, it's a healthy growth throughout the 35 years.
Real quick, Bill,
Yes, sir.
on our sheet where we see year 30, can we assume that's 2015?
Yes.
Thank you. Just clarification, anybody looking at it.
It was easier for me to put numbers in there to get the data out than to put the actual the dates in there. But on your graph, you'll see these points right up here. That's the last 3 years, and then the regression is the actual numbers that the regression analysis put in. So from here on is part of the prediction, that came about with the analysis. Now, these numbers here, remember that's 18,000, 339,000, and so on. You can see that in a minute. I'm going to talk about that because that's the actual numbers I used in what we predict our revenue to be in the next 5 years. So I didn't take anything from prior, like last year, and just add a percentage to it. We actually took the numbers, which is really an ultra-conservative way of doing it. And because this is something that is pretty steady. And it's probably going to be lower than what we actually are going to receive. So it is very conservative figures, but we want to make sure that we're covered. So that's that graph. Now, if you go to the next spreadsheet, you have the 6-year capital improvement plan. And I did some revision to this. I added some money on Panama Conway, a little bit more to Astro Land because of the purchase of the property, which we're going to talk about later. Bluff Swamp. So I did do some revision to that list of projects. Now, what I also did was, if you look at projected costs, we got the total amount projected cost of the projects. It comes up to about $50 million. But I want to make it clear to everybody that it's really, a lot of this is shared funding between EAD and other sources, be it FEMA, PLD, or whatever. So I did separate the cost out, and I said, the EAD, this is what we're responsible for, should be responsible for these projects, which is about $39 million, and we should be receiving help of about $11 million from other sources. So when we went down and broke it down year by year, I'm just using what we're responsible for, because that's coming out of our fund, and that's real numbers. So we started with 2016, and we got a total of about $15.5 million coming out in 2016. And that's a percentage complete. In 2017, about $14 million is going to funding projects. 2018, about $5 million, because we're getting to the back end of all these projects. Hopefully, we want to finish most of them by the end of 2018. The only thing that keeps going is really something that we're not certain on that right now, and that is once we get into inspection of our Marvinboro pump station, we have to take each bay down, dewater it, and go in for inspection, and we don't really know right now what we're going to find. We're estimating $1 million per pump station to actually just dewater and get inside and see. So that will be some revision probably to that, depending on how, what kind of work we have to do internally. And again, that takes it all the way to 2021. If you take the next spreadsheet, then now we get into what kind of money we have available. You take the ad valorem tax, 2015 is real numbers. Go to 2016, and again, I'm using numbers to come from the regression analysis, which is, again, conservative. $4 million for ad valorem, $13 million for sales tax. On an average, we get other sources of income in the roughly $200,000, $250,000, pretty steady, and that's from state revenue sharing and stuff like this. So what I did was you add that up, and then you come to total revenue in 2016 of $18,594,000. We're looking at our expenses, which is our 05 operations budget, which is roughly $15.9 million. If you take that from your $18 million, you come out with a net gain of about $2.6 million. You look down to the fund balance. Right now, we should have, or we have about $58 million, and that's our $19 million. Originally, it's 17. It grew to 19 from the bond or the reborrowing of the money from our bond, and the $35 million that we had in the fund balance. So what I'm doing is grouping everything together and say this is a total available funds that we have to work with. If you take that $58 million and you deduct the capital improvements, and that $15 million comes from that chart right above us, what we should spend this year in 2016, that comes up with a net, with a fund balance of 42.9 million. And again, I do the same thing on each one. You take the fund balance, you take the expenditures, and I'm adding 4% per year to expenditures. So that's just say, look, from the prior year, we're going to increase our expenditures by 4%, which is basically what we've been doing, by 4%. And then you take it all the way to the end, and again, it's the same thing at each column for each year. At the end of 5 years, when most of our projects complete, if in fact we get the help that we anticipate from the other sources, the 11 million, we should come out with still with a fund balance of 35.8 million. And that's conservative. Now, a lot of things can happen. We lose some funding, or when we get into the pumping station itself, it's a lot more than we anticipated. We can come up with some extra projects. Things happen, for us, hurricanes and whatever. You get in a situation that catastrophic, and we have to use a lot of our fund balance to go in and repair pumping stations, a tornado hit, or whatever. You really don't know. But if, in fact, we go through the next 5, 6 years, and we see, or even 3 or 4 years, and we see where we're handling everything on the money that we have, and it's still projected to have this kind of money in the future, then it comes to a decision of you councilmen to determine, say, what would we do with that money? Do we pay off probably a good business deal is to pay off a lot of our debt. A lot of the bond and that borrowing money that we took to build these projects, is to use part of that money to pay some of the debts off. Because we actually have 2 bonds in play, or 2 bonding issues. One is good for about 20 years, the other one 40 years. Now, we're already 10 years into the 20 years, so a good bit of it's paid off. We pay out about $4 million a year for that.
It was a large portion up front, and
Yeah.
the second 20 was much lower.
And basically, your first 20 is your project, like your pump station, your buildings itself. The last part is basically your levies. It's something that is meant to last many, many years, over 50 years. So, it'd be a decision of the council or you people to determine if we have more projects coming into play, one of which, of course, is the St. James Ascension project. How much money that's going to cost us, if we have to share part of that or whatever. But again, that's still 2 or 3 years down the road. Basically, I want y'all to understand, everybody understand that this is the numbers. This is what you're looking at. And again, we have plenty of enough money to finish the projects, add new projects, and possibly pay off some debt at the end. So that's the basic numbers on that. You also have in your sheet, and something that Councilman Dawson asked about, is that every month we get, it's from the finance department, and I don't know, I think you have this in your packet. And this actually comes from the finance department every month to every department. And it's a way of us tracking our expenses. And it's our fund is 05. We also have Fund 35. I didn't include the Fund 35 sheet. But this is the actuals that expenditures compared to encumbrances and the balance of the budget every month. If you wish, we can include that to y'all every month so you can track it. It's completely up to you, or we can post it, on the website or something like this. All of this, we're still trying to determine how much will go on the website. But the other thing that I think Mr. Dawson asked about is the actuals versus on our schedule, especially our project schedule and everything. The actual expenses and progress, money-wise, we already have it for us work-wise. If we're behind schedule or ahead of schedule, whatever, that's on that Gantt chart. What we're not tracking, because it's not available in that particular program, is tracking the money portion. I recently changed over to Primavera tracking software, and what we're going to be doing is transferring everything over that. It's much better at tracking money, including the schedule for us, the work schedule too. So we're transferring over to that program right now, and it should give you a lot more information once I get it in place and start giving reports a bit. So basically on the finance report, if you have a portion, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Cloy?
Yeah, real quick, Bill, back to your other charts on your projected annuals as they increase, and looking at your projected annual costs. On your O&M, do you have built-in emergencies? We did that early on, And we pretty much had some decent emergencies throughout
Yeah.
these 8 years. I don't know, maybe I'm bad luck or something, but
we
Hurricanes and
keep
all.
it kind of simple. I mean, the thing is, if we know we have a fund balance that's substantial, that's our protection. And we always try to keep enough money in that fund balance. Luckily, over the last few years, at least since we bonded some money, the 55 million, 59 million for the projects, we always had a good fund balance and kept growing. But at one time, what we were actually doing before we came into all these projects, mid-2000, 2005, 6, 7, whatever it was,
yeah.
what we're actually doing is deducting, and finance is good about this. We go ahead and deduct what we need to go into our fund balance, so we have a safety amount, a safety cushion there of money in our fund balance before we start budgeting anything else. So that comes out first, put it over there for emergencies and build up our fund balance, and then finance budgets, or allows me to budget whatever's left over into our project fund and into our operations fund.
Yeah.
And again, luck, a good thing, because over the last number of years, we didn't have to worry about it because we had that $35+ million sitting over there, so we didn't have to worry about taking money out. But once we get through these projects, and y'all determine what we do with the main portion of this, hopefully 35 million plus, well, then we're gonna go back to that kind of budgeting where we actually deduct emergency funds first and then budget everything else after that.
Just to give y'all some background while I still got the floor, basically, when 2008, when, again, I know Benny and I and Dempsey and that we had, we started 2008 with a fund balance of somewhere around 20 million, okay? Might have been 18. And within that, the bonds were already set, and they were in motion when we took office in January 28. We proceeded with the bond, but as this board here made a decision, instead of refinancing a $5 million debt within that, we asked and we took $5 million out the project to pay that debt off rather than refinance it forward. But the agreements for the bonds were already in place for 20 years, plus 20 on the tail end of lower. So if you're looking at your fund balance, and I'm just giving you a note that in 2008, 8 years ago, we basically started out with around between 18 to 20 million fund balance. And historically, we can, when it comes to these emergencies, that takes FEMA, year and a half to 2.5 years at times before we really get our money back. It can take a chop at it. So Mr. Rue might be holding on to a little bit more money than some people think. Sometimes you got to throw a lot of money forward real quick, and these bad hurricanes, and especially the ones that tore up the landscape, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And again, this is going to be updated as we go through the year, so some of the numbers can change, but basically this is what we anticipate. And I don't think it's going to be a radical change, but some numbers might fluctuate back up and down based on what we're doing. Some projects we might save some money on, some projects going to cost a little bit more when we get to it. And this is a living document because we're going to continuously keep 5 to 6 years or maybe even more ahead of us. So toward the end of this year, I'm gonna start really looking seriously about other projects to put into the loop and to extend our plan always 5 to 8 years ahead, and do the same figuring so we look at our fund balance, keep it organized so we always know exactly, can predict what's ahead of us and what we're spending, and way before we get into trouble.
Well, I appreciate this. I'm gonna let Bill have the floor, or Dempsey, but I appreciate this, and I'm like, I don't have a problem seeing it monthly.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bill Dawson?
First, thank you, Bill. I know it took a lot of effort, and maybe I wasn't too easy to get along with during some of that time, but
Well,
I do
it
appreciate
sometimes
it.
forces us to do things that I don't really think about doing, and so I enjoy, getting information together, and it's something that needed to be done.
Well, I think it's an excellent job, and it addressed all the concerns that I have. And, I look forward to some of this being on the web to where, the residents can come out and they can look and see what's the status of Panama Conway, for example, and how much have we spent, and how much do we project to spend? And I know, those are things down the road, but, ideally that would be where I think we'd want to be. Just a couple of questions and comments, and I want to thank Councilman Kluot for the history. And that was one of the recommendations, or one of the thoughts that I have is, would you establish a minimum fund balance? Have you thought about that? And obviously, 35 million at the end of 5 years, that's significant. That's twice your operating expenses. So I didn't know whether we want to set a floor for that in light of what Randy had said about emergencies, and then not be able to dip below that. So maybe it's just something that we can think about. And
I would recommend right now not under 10 million. I mean, I would like to keep a $10 million fund balance in there at all times, if possible, to cover anything unforeseen occurrences, because it don't take long to get into, say for instance, just say a real situation. During the last rain event, we had the tornadoes hit. Now, one of the major tornadoes went just south of Sorrento. Now, if that would have came over the pumping station and did massive damage to the pumping station, now you're having to go in on an emergency basis and spend millions of dollars to repair it. So, again, I would say a minimum of 10 million, into a fund balance to try to keep
Talking about
that.
10 over O&M?
Yeah.
over O&M.
That's why I made that clear
To
to everyone.
26,
Talking about 10
okay.
over O&M.
We keep it there, and then again, you budget within that. You don't dip into it to take O&M.
Well, so maybe, if you need to have a resolution or a motion from the
Well, I
from
think
the
this would be
body,
something that
or something to consider.
you as a council could just, again, we're stable now, we've got plenty of funds. Once you get to a decision-making on what you're gonna do with excess funds, paying off
Right.
stuff and everything else, that's the time I think you start making some resolutions on, what exactly we'll keep in the budget, in our fund balance and over and above, operations and stuff like this.
Thank you again.
Okay.
Ms. Terry?
I don't have any questions.
John? Okay. Anything here? That finish up your report, Bill, on,
Real briefly, let's go through the Astral Land. That's a topic that was eating me up pretty good over the last few months. It had basically to do with acquiring the land. We finally got an agreement with the person that owns the land, and it actually goes a little bit deeper than just purchasing the right-of-way where we're going to put the levee. Actually, I expanded the project to include a dry detention area, and we use the dirt from the dry detention to build the levee with. It's a better system because you have a place for the initial water to go to be stored while we're pumping out. The owner is willing to sell us actually 140 acres, the total amount from the property that he's buying, plus a piece of his property he already owns. He has already done about 50% of the effort needed to actually form a mitigation bank of about 100 acres. And that's what was his intention, because he has a mitigation bank behind it, adjacent to it. He was going to add to his mitigation bank this property here. We're looking into the possibility of buying the whole 140 acres, try to get into the mitigation part of it to give credits on some of our projects, and expand the project of Astral Land to include the dry detention, which is a better system. So we're basically looking at about 100 acres for the mitigation and about 40 acres as part of the project. We're negotiating the price right now. I told him that I need the property. We're going to put the levee and start doing work within 30 days. I said I can't go past 30 days to get permission to get on the property and start doing some work. So we're working out the details of that right now and trying to resolve it. That was part of the reason he was holding off for so long, because he had to get information from the Corps about how feasible it was to have a mitigation bank there, and also the problem of us putting a levee and how that affected the mitigation bank. So he was waiting on Corps information to get that in place before he could really tell us, we could put something there. So anyway, that's the where we're going with that. Marvinsboro Pump Station, the bids are coming in Thursday on number 7 pump. So at the next meeting, we should have enough information to bring it back to you about accepting the low bid for the number 7 pump. Bird Allen ditches, the permit finally came in, the full permit. We're gonna be going out for bids for the replacement of the bridges. We're gonna do that bid sometime this month. We're gonna try to go with quotes. They may make me bid for it. It will take a little bit longer. The process is to get a contractor in to remove the bridges. When he removes the bridges, we will dig out where the bridges are, and then he'll rebuild the bridges in place, where they're at. Then we're going to proceed down to the lower section between Bird Allen and Black Bayou and try to improve. We got to build bulkheads on one piece of property there and then improve the rest of that property. And that's all going to be bid out to build the bulkheads and do that kind of stuff. So finally we got the permit and we're able to go forward with that project. The Frog Bayou permit period is over, comment period, and so we're waiting a response, information back from the Corps for us to answer the responses, comments from that project. That's what we're waiting on, and we're going to respond back to each and every comment. It's our responsibility to answer the Corps back and give our justification on their comments and see if it's valid or not.
Go ahead, Ms. Casson.
Bill, I wanted to thank the parish president and you and Jake from GSA for the many conversations that you have had with the folks from back on the Ridge Road who had questions about the public comment period and what that process was going to look like. I thank you for taking that time. I think it's been very helpful, and I look forward to a resolution of this as quickly as possible.
And we tried to explain to the people, and they understood for the most part. They did exactly what we needed for them to do. We set the parameters of the permit for us, the elevations, the operation plan, and we had to be pretty, using the same plan that, or as close as possible, the same plan that Iberville can be using for Alligator Bayou, because the Corps thinks of this as one basin. So we had to be kind of pretty much on the same page with it. We encouraged the residents to send responses to the Corps on their views of what the elevation should be. And when we get it back, we'll go back to the Corps, answer these comments, and hopefully I'm hoping we can get the Corps to allow us to lower the elevation. The highest elevation that we're allowed to go back in when we get a flooding situation.
My understanding was that Jake was going to be doing some justification of those calculations, so I wonder if he has had time to fool with that and has any response to that, or if indeed at this point we just don't know.
I don't think he's really, we talked about it, and he's going to be doing some more work for us out there, and we're looking at some things, but basically right now the step is to wait till we get the official information back from the Corps, and then Jake and I will get together, and then we'll formulate a plan to respond to those comments.
I think this is a really critical juncture today and this week, as we see, as the water is still high in the swamp, and the project has not moved forward as timely as we would have liked, and we're getting ready to face significant rain impact. So this should be a great test for those calculations and maybe help us to be able to look at what those folks would like to see, which is a lowering of that that base flood elevation there, and maybe help them, as opposed to take it down from a 5 to somewhere closer. I don't know that we could get it down to a 2, but somewhere closer to 3 or 4.
Right, and I'll tell you how it kind of works. If say for instance we would have went in and we say we wanted at a 2, and it's significantly different from Frog Bayou, and people are pretty funny about this. They'll comment on something if they disagree with it. If they agree with it, they don't comment. So if that would have went in and you had a disagreement from other parishes, and our people are all for it, so they're not going to comment, but then the Corps just gets one set of information or problems. Like this, the people on Ridge Road and around Bluff Road and everything commenting on the 5 elevation, and they're putting out a lot of good reasons why it shouldn't be 5. And that's when it comes back to us, and basically we can go in and formulate data to support their contention from living there for so many years that it really should be less than that. So I think, again, this is a strategy that we thought is best, and I think it's the best way to go on it.
Thank you all for that. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Mr. Turner?
No question. You answered my question about Astor Lane.
Yes, sir. I'm pushing to get man and the machines out there first of next month. Yes, sir.
Also, it was gonna save a lot of money by digging it and using the dirt there to build a levee.
That's it.
That's your plan, which is a good plan.
It's going to be good on both sides. It's going to give us additional space for storage, so we protect the people a lot easier, faster, and we can use the dirt. All the dirt used on the levee come from site, so it's a twofold benefit to the parish.
Mr. Kluwer?
What about Law Ridge levy?
I got it on my list.
Okay, I didn't
And
know
I've
if you
got-
was down the
next to it,
list.
I got Mr. Jake Lambert with GSA.
That's what we want. Is that the answer, man?
My name is Jake Lambert. I'm an engineer with Glenn Shaheen and Associates in Gonzales. We're working on the Laurel Ridge Levee Extension project. Currently, we have responded to the comments that we received from the Department of Natural Resources. Those comments should be uploaded to their website. They take it, upload it to one central location, the Sunrise website, and then they distribute that information to all the other commenting agencies. That should be up there in the next few days. We've given them the information that they've requested. Additionally, this week we're meeting with, we had some of the folks from the Pontchartrain Levee District, some consultants for the Pontchartrain Levee District did the title abstract work on all of the parcels that are going to be impacted by this levee. We'll use that information to, in the near future, begin the boundary surveys. From that, the right-of-way maps will be prepared, and then from that information is what the parish will use to, at some point, once we get our permits, I wouldn't recommend doing it before we get that, although everything is in the process of occurring, to acquire the right-of-way. The other thing that we're working on right now is developing a wetland mitigation plan. As you are aware, there's some direct wetland impacts in the footprint of the levee, and we are working on putting a plan together that the Corps will have to approve to offset those impacts. We had a meeting 2 Fridays ago with some of the folks at the Corps about this, and we were able to have a conversation about what we were going to propose, and they were able to give us some general guidelines and feedback, and it seems like we're going to be able to develop a good plan that'll satisfy their requirements and to the best that we can handle the wetland mitigation that we're going to have to deal with for this levee. But that's where we're at right now. We're still pushing that permit. That's the big.
I guess we're pushing the permit, but, we had the 90%, we're on the 10-yard line. Where are we at?
I would imagine I'm
We have
expecting to have
no-
a permit in the next
Every
2 to
question's been
4
asked.
months. Yes, sir.
All the comment period's gone. All that's been done. We were waiting on some of the other agencies. Is those in?
Well, we
Are there
responded to
comments
the
in?
comments, and they will take those comments and distribute them again. And we're not expecting any major issues at this point. I think we've went over all the big hurdles, and it's just one of those things that takes a little time. But I'm hoping in the next few months we can have all the issues resolved.
Right.
We've been at it for over a year now, the permitting process.
Yeah, we'd had a plan about a year and a half ago to where we would have had that permit about 3 months ago. So that's all,
Yes, sir. Yes,
at least
sir.
3.
Well, look, I mean,
Best laid
I know
plans of
people have
mice
been-
and men, I know.
well, it's
Is there
It's-
anything
it's
that we
big
can do on the parish level to help out?
No,
Our
well-
administration, this council, this board?
as you guys have been doing. I think it's beneficial every handful of months to make sure you maintain contact with both the officials at the Corps and also at the state level, Department of Natural Resources. That's beneficial to develop and foster those relationships. Ascension Parish has worked really hard with Mr. Bill and in the previous administration to restore some of the trust issues that Ascension had over the years. All of those things help move these projects along. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be done. And like I said, in the meanwhile, we're working on the other items that need to be taken care of, so that when we get the permit, we'll be real close to finish the design up and get it out. So.
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman, maybe for the administration, at some point, our agreement with PLD needs to be squared up. I wonder if that's something that legal's working on or something that,
It's on the agenda.
what's that?
It's on the agenda.
Yes,
Number
indeed.
9.
Mr. President?
They did it quickly.
It's on the agenda for number 9.
Yeah.
But also I wanted to ask Bill about, I know you were talking about looking into possibly using that on this project, using that mitigation property back at Astroland.
Well,
Is
it's
that something we could possibly do?
we are looking at, and one of the deal is, I think, now I don't know the proper terminology, but basically the Corps is going to write a new, or in the process of putting out a new, memo saying that we might be able to use
Number 9 is not.
mitigation units from a bank outside of the basin that we're doing the work in. And if that happens, that really will benefit us there, because we can possibly use credits from the Panama Basin over into another basin. Right now, they pretty much, determine that you need to use it within the basin. But anyway, we work with the Corps on it and the consultants on that part of it.
Thank you.
Just, if I could get one clarification, I'm gonna leave y'all alone, that what number 9 is not what I'm talking about. Well, I think that we may have some pending agreement for the Law Ridge levy. We're working under a MOO right now.
We are, well, actually, you're right. And to the council member that just
I mean,
came
it's
in.
a technical
we-
thing, but
we
when the dollars
we under-
get finished,
Absolutely.
then we gotta do the final.
If you notice under my report, under the spreadsheet, I've got our portion of the Law Ridge levy, 13.5 million. The rest of the money is PLD. That was under a memorandum of understanding that the most that the parish would be responsible for is 13.5 million. It was 12, or 11 and a half or 12 million.
Yeah.
And then because of additional costs, it got up to 13.5. But I will contact the attorney for Mr. Dwight Poirier,
Yeah.
and we'll start working through a more substantial agreement.
I just want, basically under the MOO, we cleared up the responsibilities of one
Yeah.
agency and the other, but the dollar figures were projected, not necessarily real. So at some point, we gotta keep getting closer to the real numbers and nail both agencies down, putting ourselves to
I
what
think we need to go with the same thing we're doing with the St. James and Ascension, a contract, actually a little bit more.
Yes, indeed.
Something that's more definite.
That's all I got.
And so I'll talk to Mr. Poirier tomorrow on that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sadler? Mr. Aaron? Nothing. Bill, you had something you want to finish up on? Mr. Aaron?
No, thank you.
John? Benny? Anything else, Mr. Rue, or from the administration?
Nothing more on my report.
Thank you for that. There's a lot of good information. We'll move on to number 7, authorization to advertise for engineering. Mr. Rue?
Okay, this is for the Weir in Gonzales. We got the information back from the consultant on what we should do at that location. Basically, it says do nothing. Or if you are going to do something, you do a weir there that can be completely removed or lifted to allow full flow through that section of the river, to allow the sediment and everything else to eventually wash out, or at least somewhat wash out. But it actually give us increased flow through that area, which we're not getting now because of the weir. So what I suggest is that we go for RFQ for engineering to go ahead and come up with some alternate design on what can be put there and the cost of the different kinds of structures that can be put there and the benefits of those structures. And then once we get that, we'll come back to the council and make a recommendation.
It's going to be moved by Mr. Johnny.
Second.
Question? Let's go ahead and get the vote. Second by Mr. Kluwat. Discussion, Mr. Johnny.
Yeah, I've been working with Bill on this. This is in District 10. met with the mayor, Barney Arsenault, and Jackie, city engineer. They're excited about this. This is something that they've been worried about, and they've had complaints about it, whether they want New River Bayou to be a lake effect, pooling effect, whatever you want to call it, or let it drain. And I think with what Bill's indicated with these studies, it'll give us some options.
Yeah.
Right, Bill?
Exactly, and if you really think about it, if you are able to design something that for the full reach of the bayou across, if most of it can be eliminated, raised up, and allow full flow to go through, then in addition to, become a better drainage structure because you can let full flow go through it. The same thing is also a good point about it is that you can actually make it higher than what it is now and give more elevation in that area, within the river reaches during, dry periods and not harm drainage because at any point in time you can lift it and let the flow go through.
Right.
We get a
And
rain
in a
event.
major
So,
rain event, that'll be a
Right.
gauge. If it gets too high, it'll give them an indication and maybe turn on another pump at Marvin Bro and really get the water out of there. So it's going to be a tremendous opportunity to give the citizens of Gonzales and all those along New River Bayou, Gooding, Smith Bayou, better drainage.
And again, it comes back down to a cost benefit. We have to look at the final cost of putting the structure in there and the actual cost, and it comes back to you, and you'll make the decision on if it's the benefits outweigh the costs.
Mr. Kluwer?
Yeah, Bill, you probably, if you're looking at like a 3 or 4 piece guillotines, the way you stage open it, and
Right.
you can get it 100% at times and then close back on it. It's I just want to tell everybody when you go down and put that base down for it, that's where the money's at.
Yeah,
It'll be-
you got
it'll be
to call for
substantial.
dam and dewater and then dig out, and put your base in.
All right, any opposition to the motion? Not, motion passed. Move on to number 9, authorization to execute intergovernmental agreement. Mr. Rue?
Yes, sir. We are asking for authorization to execute the intergovernmental agreement between Punch Run Levee District and East Ascension Gravity Drainage District Number 1 for the St. James Ascension Storm Surge Flood Protection Project Engineering Analysis. And handing out the contract for your review.
Give us the cliff notes, man.
But basically, they're gonna be paying for everything, as far as the engineering, this phase of it. And if no funds will be asked for.
And guys, I did read it and review it, and it does have a provision in it that if we would ever have to pay any funds, that they'd have to come back to this board and get approval before anything would be
indeed.
expended, so
Yeah.
I was okay with everything in it.
Moved by
Mr.
Mr.
Dawson.
Bill Dawson, second by Mr. Kluwat. Discussion? Any opposition to the motion? Not, motion passed. Move on to number 10, executive session. Roll call, Ms. Heather.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Sadley?
Yes.
Mr. Kluwat?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Dawson?
Yes.
Ms. Casso?
Yes.
Mr. Cangelati?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passed.
We're in the executive session.
Motion to reconvene.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kluwat to reconvene, second by Mr. Aaron Lawler. We have one action. Ms. Castle, would you please take care of it?
Absolutely. If I can remember exactly how that's supposed to be worded. I would like to authorize Bill Rue to negotiate with the landowner, Mr. Frank Bonifay, I believe it is, and move toward either settling of those negotiations or effort to expropriate that property.
Second by Mr. Johnny. Any discussion? Any opposition? Not, motion passed. Number 11. Moved by Mr. Turner, second by Mr. Kluwat. We adjourn.